This life is very twisted. You never know when it's your time to go. One day you're putting in work with someone, and the next day they're taking you out.
In our days, it was very quiet. Nobody ever talked about this. Nobody glamorized it. It was all like hush hush.
Not a glamorous life. And again, it's not what you see in Goodfellas. It's not what you see in Casino. Some days you were dead broke. Some days you had $2,000 in your pocket. It wasn't every day. You don't know anything else. You don't know what it is to go wake up 6 o'clock and go to work. Work? What the fuck is that? I wasn't going to work.
Even bosses get murdered in this life.
There was younger guys underneath him, and he wasn't doing the right thing, I guess. He was coming out of the card game, and unfortunately, a lone gunman came up and shot him 5 times.
People who knew me would tell you I like to use the bat a lot. If I had to shoot you, I'd shoot you too. I've done that.
This life requires many mixed personalities. You have to wear many hats in this life to try and survive.
You become 4 or 5 different people all at once. And you got to go home and be a dad and a husband. You got to go to work and do your job. You got to be out in the street and be a gangster.
Bonanno family is called the Bonanno family because of my grandfather, Joe Bonanno.
That life there is done. Today you have to be legitimate today.
Man. But you got to be an idiot to want to be a hooligan today. Jail time's now like 100 years for doing nothing.
Yeah, you'll be dead, in prison for life, or in the witness protection program.
I don't know anybody. Now, when the Mafia turned their back on me, I know everybody.
There was the big flip of the Gambino underboss, Sammy the Bull Gravano.
Here he is, signing autographs in a restaurant on Mulberry Street. And was supposed to be a secret organization.
He was a very, very, very violent guy. No question about it.
Albert Anastasia, he was a Brooklyn guy. He was probably the biggest killer in the history of the mob.
Michael Francis, his father, Sonny, was a really tough guy. But he really raised his son right.
If you want to see a gangster, that's Sonny Francis. And John Sr. don't compliment anybody.
This is a documentary series about the American Mafia. It includes 11 different crime families. Each episode is about a different one. The crime families include the Gambino, Genovese, Bonanno, Colombo, Lucchese, the Gallo Crew, Chicago Outfit, the Philadelphia Mafia, the Patriarca, the Trafficante crime family, and the Jewish Mafia. Please subscribe to my channel to watch each episode as they come out.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining William Steele, True Crime. This is your host, William Steele. We have a phenomenal show tonight, and I'll tell you what, I have a very special guest, a friend of mine, Adrian Martinez. Adrian has a channel called Invest in Yourself. Please check it out, like and subscribe. If you're a fan of mine, please check him out, subscribe. Now, Adrian's on the screen here with me, and he's sitting tight while I try to explain who he is. Now, Adrian started something that he talks about stories of redemption and investing in yourself and doing better things with your life than maybe you were doing before. And in my case, I did 18 years in prison for nonviolent crimes. And, I have this show, Inmate to Roommate, that just kind of blew up. I have some true crime books. And so he and I are on the same page about, turning the corner, turning your life around. And he's been telling phenomenal stories of guys who've done that. Now, what we're doing here tonight is we're talking about a mob history series that he's putting out. That mob history series, and I'll let him clarify anything, is, my understanding, is going to be 11-part series, documentary style. And he's very knowledgeable in organized crime. He's got plenty of connections. He's interviewed some of the top guys that were in the life. And generally, these are guys who have all turned their life around, turned the corner. They saw the light. They don't agree with the lifestyle anymore. They know everybody's either going to prison or getting killed or turning on each other, in the worst possible way. So, my thing is this: if you're a wise guy, the real wise guys are wise enough to get the hell out of the life. And I don't begrudge somebody, the life of crime. I was involved with stealing jewelry and artwork for a long time. But in the end, and I look at it from, I'm not a perfect person, but I do look at it from a biblical perspective at some stage. 18 years in prison will cause you to really get into the word and realize that there's a spiritual existence all around us. And that what's in that book is real. It's real. It's coming from the man. So, there's joy in sin for a season, so all it looks good at the time. All the cash, the ready cash, the nice cars, the women, the respect. But in the end, what do you have for it? What do you have to show for it? Most people have almost nothing unless they stashed it away and they left the country or something because the feds have taken it. Their wives, their lawyers. The lawyers are the biggest, crooks of all. Sometimes I love some of my attorneys, but, so I've had more trouble with attorneys than I've had with other criminals. But anyway, that being said, let me introduce my friend from Invest in Yourself channel on YouTube, Adrian Martinez. Adrian, welcome to my show.
Hey, thanks, William, for having me come on, man. I really appreciate it, and thank you for the wonderful intro, man. That's one of the best ones I got, man. I
No
appreciate
problem.
that. But yeah, you want me to kind of just talk about, my documentary that I got going on, or
Right.
you know,
Just tell my audience, for people who don't know you, because most of my fans now, like I
yeah,
have millions of fans from the inmate to roommate, and I got 4 more movie offers right now. I'm starting a TV show in the Midwest, another separate TV show besides inmate to roommate, and that's going to be another show about inspirational figures, and that show is called Steal the Spotlight. Now
yeah,
that's that because I opened a public relations firm now. So Steal the Spotlight Media is the public relations firm. Steal the Spotlight is the name of the TV show. Now, that being said, I really want my audience from my fans are awesome. They're incredible. They're very loving. They're all about the inspirational, turn your life around story. So tell us who you are and how you came to start invest in yourself, and then tell us about your mob history series.
okay, yeah, no, I mean, well, you know, he introduced me. I'm Adrian Martinez. I had my show called Invest in Yourself podcast. The way I got started with that was, I have my clothing brand, Invest in Yourself Clothing, and I really wanted to be able to give it a voice, or, so I was like, okay, well, maybe I can do a podcast and do interviews with, business people, comedians, actors, rappers, and, different stuff like that. And, I, just kind of kept branching out to different things, and I just really wanted to, talk to all kinds of people from around the world. And, I kind of realized too, like, there's people with really good redemption stories, such as William Still. I ran into him later on, but, like, I was like, I can do interviews with these guys that have had a hell of a past and did a lot of criminal stuff. And, long as they have changed their life around and stuff and are serious about it, it's like, yeah, let me do shows with them, because, you know, they got a voice too, you know what I mean? And, sometimes it's harder for them to get a platform to do it, because, some people don't want to do it. But for me, I definitely did. And, so that's where I'm at. I've done currently a lot of interviews with a lot of ex-mobsters, gangsters, authors, and stuff, over the last couple months. But, that's, kind of where I'm at with it. And, me, I never really got into the life of crime, a little bit, but, nothing ever serious, you know what I mean? So, I've had a lot of family members and different stuff like that, that have been in trouble with the law and stuff. But, I've always tried to steer away from it, because I've seen, what it can do, and, how you can end up in prison, you know what I mean? And it's not a good life to, to live, you know what I mean? There's, especially in this day and age, there's so much more opportunity that you can do, instead of that kind of stuff.
That's right. I appreciate that outlook. A lot of people wouldn't give me the time of day. You're in prison all these years. You think nobody gives a crap. In my case, my family ripped me off for $800,000 inheritance, and we're still in the courts dealing with that, because they thought they could take advantage of me when I was in prison. But yet, when I was getting out, they're afraid I'm gonna, go hurt them or kill them. And I forgive my family, my sisters who did this, but at the same time, I'm trying to get on my feet. I'm struggling to get on my feet, coming out with nothing, and they knew they were leaving me in that situation. So I guess, sometimes the proof is in the pudding. I wasn't my first rodeo. I was living, the really fast life in South Florida, Vegas, New York City, being from Brooklyn. So I really appreciate your station, and you with somebody that's not necessarily with a record, understanding that guys can turn their life around and make it. Guys like Sean Atwood, he's got a great channel. Also, you and I have a lot of the same friends right now. A lot of guys doing true crime stations. I can call a friend or mentor, because I came out of prison not knowing how to use these things here. So, now I use it all day long. So I don't know anything about social media. I've only been out a year, and you've been one of the people I can call on and rely on. Say, Adrian, how the hell do I post this? Or what does this mean? Or what's a hashtag? So I'm learning this, man, and I'm learning fast. Anybody watching this knows that I'm on there constantly. Putting something out, call it shameless self-promotion. I'm very, very good at promoting, and that's why I figured I'd start Steal the Spotlight Media. Thank you for giving me a chance on your show early on, before you really knew who I was.
Yeah, no. I was going to say, no, I'm glad I did have you as well, because, like me and you've had conversations, about TikTok, because, you were one of the most highest views that I've ever had on there, 3 million views, on our interview clip. And, if I wouldn't give people like you opportunities like that, I mean, you wouldn't get, those kind of views and stuff. And on top of that, people really like to hear the wild stuff, you know what I mean? But then that draws them in, and then they get the full interview, and they're like, okay, this is, this guy, yeah, that was, some stuff he was doing in the past, and, whatever, but, now he's got a cool show, and, he's an author, and, he's been out of prison. You know what I mean? Just really changed it around.
Yeah, and incredibly, I had a fan right around the time you told me about the 3 million views. He said, you and your show are blowing up on TikTok, and he was talking about your views and all that. 3 million views just for like one sentence I said on one of your shows, and I'm like, what the hell is TikTok? And I think then we opened a TikTok account. Within days, somebody else, the same guy, as a matter of fact, he said something about you're blowing up on TikTok, and I'm like, okay, what do you mean? So right now, the show has 11 million views. It's only been out a few months. Inmate to Roommate on A&E. Thank you, A&E and Sharp Entertainment, for giving me this opportunity. I'm very, very blessed and appreciative. But so it's given me a good platform because I was going to write books anyway. I had several written when I was in prison, screenplay, and I was already going places wanting to do these true crime channels when I get out and stuff to help people that are wrongfully incarcerated, tell stories of redemption, transform lives. And so here we are doing it, but A&E has given me this massive platform that really gets people even more interested in me, doing the right thing. And I think a lot of the props I get from people, a lot of people who've done time or know a family member who's done time. And they said, hey, you've dealt with a lot of crap with those people you were living with, and you handled it well, and you're doing good with your life. And, it just really feels good to get that. So on TikTok, right now, 11 million views. I'm like, what the freak, man? What does that mean? I'm getting offered to be an influencer. What does that mean? So,
yeah.
All right.
No, I was going to say, no, I really think your book, the books that you were able to make, while you're in prison and, being able to come out, and promote them, while you're on the show, I mean, that's a really good thing, I mean, being able to have that, blow up like it is, and, continue to blow up and bring all these other opportunities for you. So you're definitely doing the right thing in the right direction, man. So, keep on doing it.
You and I have had the book that they allowed me to talk about, Sex and a Serial Killer, My Bizarre Times with Robert Durst. I knew him, wealthiest serial killer in American history. His family controls most of the real estate in Lower Manhattan, the World Trade Center complex, the management company. The family's worth billions. He was worth about 100 million. So I knew him. My first book was about him, and A&E and Sharp Entertainment allowed me to do a whole, basically half an episode just on my first book written in prison and how I came out and I was doing book signing and, and how the lady of the house had too much profanity in it. So I threw it out. There's Seventh Day Adventists. So, of course, me speaking like a New Yorker, the way things happened back then, sure, I used the F word a lot. Sure, those conversations were like that. But, so she, try to get people not to buy the book. But it was covered on the show, and it did good. It was actually covered by Nancy Grace. So everybody now calls me True Crime King. She's known as the queen of true crime. So I think that's kind of weird. If you look at my redesigned cover, we have her stuff right on the cover. So she did have my book on her podcast while I was still in prison. New York Post. Yeah, it's been pretty crazy. Listen, we're not here to talk about me much longer and, about how we met. We have a lot of similar friends. My background, South Florida, Miami, Boca Raton, Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale. And we have a similar friend now who used to be in federal law enforcement, Ignacio Esteban. He's written 56, 60 books probably by now. Yeah. And he was an undercover ATF agent in South Florida, knows well who I am. And so now we've become friends of sorts, but he's become a frequent guest. And, it's a really good person to know. He's been on my show. He's been on your show. We've met fascinating guys like the biggest marijuana smuggler in the history of the world, basically, Tim McBride, saltwater cowboy in South Florida. So he's getting ready to do some more things and a movie and all that. But so Tim has stories of tons and tons of marijuana. And, and then other guys in the true crime space like Bill Stacks, Chip, Hollywood Wade from Crime and Entertainment. So we got to know all these guys. And, I'm just glad that you guys take my calls and still help me. And I'm glad that my platform can help you guys a little bit. So let's tell me about this series you have, because you see, we did our background in honor of your series. Yeah, that background was designed specifically for you, Adrian, to help you promote your mob history series, 11-part series coming up soon. Tell us about it.
Well, I've been working on this series. It's about the American Mafia, the rise and fall. There's 11 episodes altogether. Each episode's about a different crime family. So, I talk about, the New York five families, and then I talk about the Chicago outfit, the Trafficante crime family, Philadelphia, Patriarcha, and then I even cover the Gallo crew as well. But, altogether there's 11 episodes, and I had about 15, maybe less than 15, guys that were involved with the life. that were either made men, associates, talk about, what their position was and who the people that they were around, and, kind of give a perspective on that. But, it's mainly about the crime family's bosses, how they made their money, hits, wars, and anything else that was involved, influential members and stuff like that, people will be interested in. So, on top of that, I got Ignacio in it as well as a few other cops that were in it, and they give their perspective on things. And some guys were actually undercover agents that did take down, mobsters in certain families and stuff like that. And then I had some mob experts and stuff on there as well. And, I just really it's been a really good experience. I just kind of, when it all came to me to do it was when I was just, trying to go to sleep one night, and I was like, damn, I've been doing all these interviews with all these mobsters and stuff, and I got to do something. I've been watching all these documentaries and stuff. I was like, I can do this. I can do something like this. You know what I mean? And sure as shit, 6 months later, or whatever it is now, I mean, I'm done with it. I'm in the promoting stages of it, and it's something really interesting, and I think people will like it. Each episode's about 20-30 minutes, and I'll post one once a week. So it'll run for about 3 months. And then after that, I of course, still got the interviews and stuff I'm doing, but, more projects probably to come. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of what it is, briefly, you know what I mean? Yeah. You got anything you want to throw at me?
Well, no, it's come together. I know you've been hinting at this for a few months now, and asked me if I would, if you come on the show and I don't have any problem giving you this time and having you on my show and telling my fans about it. But yeah, I think you're doing great, man. I really like your energy and your style and the way you do things and your sincerity. You're just a pretty decent guy. And, I want to give a shout out. We often we say thank you at the end of a show to our guests, but let's give a shout out to all these guys and women that come on our shows who were formerly in that life. Like I kind of avoided mob guys. I knew a lot of them in Brooklyn, right? Now, I was one of the people there when Sammy the Bull murdered the owner of Plaza Suite in Brooklyn. Okay. I was right there. So I witnessed that. Okay. I witnessed literally. Okay. Never came forward, for years. I didn't say a word about it to anybody. But so I lived like 2 blocks from Plaza Suite, right, where this happened. So I know all these guys, right? I didn't associate with them. I had a family member who was very close. There'll be occasional, because I was a locksmith and alarm technician with some of these mobsters, would say, hey, we know where there's a club in Long Island, or the guy owns 3 clubs. All the cash is held there, Sunday night. You could go in, maybe get, $1 million, $2 million in cash. We need your help to get in the safe. It's at the accountant's office. It's at the, this office or that office. And I turned down a lot of that stuff because I already know I'm not a made guy. I put that much cash in front of them, no offense to anybody still in the life, but the chances of me catching a bullet so they can keep all the money was pretty high. So I did pretty good by myself. I was all over the country, hitting mansions, hitting jewelry stores, art galleries, and 99.9% of the time I worked alone. I found my own heists. And so I already knew that even as far as the 80s, when I was really getting started, that life was falling apart. One, it wasn't for me. I'm part Sicilian and part English, so I could never be made. But it wasn't for me to even associate too much with them, other than see them in a neighborhood. And they all knew my grandfather. And so, but as far as getting involved with them too closely on anything, no. But I do want to give my respect and my thanks personally. And I think we all owe them a thanks for coming forward now, all these years later, to give us these stories that if they would have told any of these stories back in the 70s or 80s,
boom,
they'd be killed.
Yeah.
We had Anthony Riamonde. As much as people mock the guy, here's an older man that has some health issues right now, who's coming clean about his life and the disappointment and the people that have let him down, and telling the truth. And guess what? He's not hiding. He's right there in Brooklyn, still in the old neighborhood. Just a good-hearted dude. Anthony Riamonde, he wrote When the Bullet Hits the Bone. Now, they can laugh that we interview him and we know him, but my fiance, Dr. Mary Bass, is a fraud examiner. We looked into everything he said, and every last thing he said checks out. His family tree, back to Lucky Luciano, his all these relationships check out. FBI documents from years ago with his name as a associate or made member, whatever it was, with the Colombo family.
Wow,
he's an older guy. Everything he has said is checked out. So who knows? Maybe everybody embellishes the stories, but this is a guy that's become a friend of mine, and these guys don't have to tell these stories.
Yeah, no, they don't at all, so that's why I was lucky that I was able to do like 15 plus interviews with all these people, and more, of course, throughout my podcast and stuff, but, only certain ones wanted to be on the documentary or whatever. But, you talk about Sammy, and Sammy, he's talked about in the Gambino episode, and, there's a lot of stuff to be said about him in it. It's not like I just cover the history. I don't, bash or anything like that, but I'm just, stating out the facts and stuff. So he has a really interesting part.
That's what I try to do, because then if it feels like, if people feel you're taking one side or the other, then you make inadvertent enemies or animosity or talking crap. I keep a clean show anyway. That's how I am. I just want to keep a clean show. It's about who changed their life, who wants to help people. It's horrible what everybody went through. Both sides have legitimate arguments why they flipped, why they didn't flip. He was no good. He flipped. They all have legitimate arguments. I don't take sides. I'm like you, historian. I tell it for news purposes, history. And again, I grew up all around that stuff growing up in Brooklyn. Every time I turned around, it was dead people or mob guys or somebody saying, like when I was a kid, I used to see Carlo Gambino all the time. And these people went to my church. They in my neighborhood on Avenue W, Avenue Y. He had a house on Avenue Y. I'm on Avenue X. Our Lady of Grace. And so every time I'd see him in the neighborhood, hey Billy, how you doing? I knew your grandfather Santo. So like I knew these people when I was a little kid. I didn't hang out with them, but they knew who I was. They knew who my grandfather was. They knew who my mother was. So, I just give these guys a lot of props for coming by, because any of these stories, man, it would have got them killed back in the day.
Yeah, it's a lot of different.
I saw your trailer. Your trailer's phenomenal. I guess you did that voiceover scripted.
Yeah.
Your voiceover on that was like professionally done. You sounded really good. I'll tell you that. I hope the show is the same. Because a lot of times we screw up here on these lives and whatever we're doing now, and it's like you stutter, I stutter, you repeat yourself, I repeat myself. But when you did that voiceover for your trailer, which for my audience, we're going to play that here at the end of this show. I'm going to put his trailer for this mob series coming up so you guys can see how well it's done. One of your guests, I forget which one, I think it was a former Columbo. One of them said something about, the wise guys, the guys that think they could be a wise guy today, they're idiots, they're telling on each other.
Yeah.
That was the best wisdom in your whole clip right there.
Yeah, that was Frank DiMatteo, I think, and his buddy Anthony DeLuca. They were part of the Gallo crew, and so they're in that episode.
Yes.
Yeah, and they just kind of, I took it from each episode. I try to, get a guy from each episode or whoever and put it in there and make it just, all fit together. And, it did. And, you're right, it's scripted, when I'm trying to say stuff, because if I mess up, I don't want that in there, but on shows and stuff, it's different. But on there, it's just
your trailer is really nice and polished, man. I like it. And I got a feeling, I haven't seen your episodes yet. I have a feeling it's going to be good. I saw you had Miami Joy Gallo. Miami Joy Miami.
Joey Gallo, Joey Miami. I guess she goes
the
by
lady there from Trafficante. Mm-hmm. So she's been in touch with me, wanting to come on my show and everything. I need to arrange to schedule her. Some of the guys you had on, I've been in touch here and there, but I've been in prison 18 years, guys. It's not that I'm not getting back to anybody. It's that I had a TV show where I had cameras in my face 24/7. I came out essentially, with nothing. Now it's starting to come up again, but I'm learning this. Social media didn't exist when I went to prison. I have to be on it every day now, So I'm getting to you guys, and I promise you, we're going to have a 5-day-a-week show on the internet, social media. I have my podcast, William Steele True Crime, and please like and subscribe if you like this show. If you like Adrian, go over to his stuff. But yeah, so a lot of these guys I've been in touch with. Now, the most fascinating thing you said, because it's mostly overlooked. You discussed the Jewish mob. Now I want to know who you interviewed from the Jewish mob, what you know about the Jewish mob and their history, and tell us about the Jewish mob.
Well, I interviewed Myron Sugarman. He's he was one of the last. He says his book is The Last Jewish Gangster. You know what I mean? Right. So he was able to be like his father was involved with it deeply, and even himself he got to meet like who was it? I think Meyer Lansky and stuff like that. But, he really gives his perspective on it and, how the Jewish family started and, where they went and how they were only like a one generation kind of thing because they got their money and they got out. So from that, what I did with that one, that episode was a whole different thing because it was only one generation. So I just covered high members in those families like, Bugsy Siegel, Meyer Lansky, Arnold Rothstein, and a few others. You know what I mean? But
like you said, from the history, where I think wasn't Meyer Lansky, if I'm not mistaken, one of the original founders with other guys of like Murder Inc. or something like that.
well, yeah, he was a part of the Murder Inc. and stuff. But like Arnold Rothstein, he was like definitely one of the OGs, like of the Jewish Mafia. And he mentored like Lucky Luciano, Meyer Lansky, Frank Costello, and other guys that became humongous figures, in Cosa Nostra and stuff.
Was it Bugsy Siegel? Bugsy Siegel had the idea to found Las Vegas and the Flamingo.
Yeah.
He ended up dead. Now, there's another guy, if you ever heard of Dave the Jew Berman.
Who's that one? I guess I don't know that one. I'm not familiar.
Dave the Jew, he ran Vegas, I think, or part of whatever he ran out there under Meyer Lansky and some other guys back in the day, I guess 30s, 40s. Now, my friend Susan Berman was one of the people murdered by Robert Durst, the subject of my book, Sex and the Serial Killer, My Bizarre Times with Robert Durst. Susan was a screenwriter and mafia princess, legitimate mafia princess. She grew up in Las Vegas. Davey the Jew, mafia guy, was her father. And he died when she was still a little girl, but she had all these connections, like, Elvis singing for her at her birthday party because her father arranged it, all this real stuff. Well, this, piece of crap, Robert Durst, billionaire or whatever, ended up murdering her in Beverly Hills a few years ago. So my book is about that. So there's that connection to the Jewish mob. I also know other people, from New York that were involved or had family back in the day. So I'm glad you're telling that side of the story too. Now we all know that this is mob history, the stories that are the common names. There's plenty of other organized crime groups out there right now, very active, whether they be cartels, street gangs that are very powerful, Armenian gangs, all kinds of groups that are out there. But we're talking about the old school, old style gangsters, the foundation in this country, how it got started.
Yeah, and that's what I cover overall. Like I go to the beginning of each episode, like I go back to the crime families, who were the original bosses,
Right.
And eventually after Lucky Luciano formed the commission, and the 5 families and stuff. I continue it, until the present, covering all the bosses, like I said, wars, internal hits, and just anything that was going on, basically.
Let me ask you a question, unless it's secret information, because I don't even know. To be honest with you, I don't stay on top of it. Somebody like Anthony Riamonte might know because he's still in Brooklyn. But who runs the 5 families now? Everybody knew it was Gotti before, and this one, that one. Who runs the various families these days? Do you even know the names? Are they publicly out there? I don't want to put anything out there that's not public or is going to get you in trouble or anything. I'm just curious who the names are these days.
I mean, from the research that I did, like for the Lucchese family, like it seems like, they say Vic Amuso is still the acting boss over there, or the boss, but he has acting bosses because he's in life prison.
Right.
Gambino, the last known boss, that they were saying was be the boss was Domenico Cefalu, if I'm saying that right, and then Genovese. I don't fucking know. No, I don't recall. I can't.
What's interesting? Even some of their daughters now are doing the interviews. How they ran around it and blah blah blah. I think Chin Chigante's daughter, what's her name, Rita. She's been several interviews. Where does okay? So now let me ask you something. And again, you and I don't do the type of shows to pit one story against the other. We just tell the story. So John A. Light's always out there. He was on your show. John Jr., John Gotti, Angel Gotti's been around. Now, what exactly is their beef? And, everybody's accusing this one of cooperating, that one of cooperating. What is the real story between those guys? Like childhood friends and was A. Light really working with John Gotti Sr.?
I think it was Junior that he was with, because from an interview that I did with a mob guy, he was an associate. He told me that John A. Light got moved up to, go with Junior Gotti. So I think, with them, I think there's some bad tension or whatever with each other, but, I don't know for sure, but, there's definitely tension there. But, I think there's always, you think about it, bro, like with a lot of these, with a lot of guys, there's a lot of beef and stuff going on. I could barely get, some guys to come on and do a show together, because there's just so much stuff going on, drama between people, this or that, rumors and shit going on, but
and the true history, because of who you are and where you're located, and you weren't really part of this. You don't really know. And even though I lived in Brooklyn, I don't know the whole history between these guys. But I know there's beef, and a lot of them couldn't be in the same room together. I saw A-Light on the one hand, and God bless him. We pray for his daughter. He lost his daughter to a fentanyl overdose recently. So we feel bad for that. You know, fentanyl is ridiculous. We have a president who's doing nothing about it to stop the trafficking. But anyway, that being said, you know, he comes across as somebody who changed his life. You know, he was a hitman. He's this and that. And he's in counseling, then to making what seemed like veiled threats on the internet the other day, saying, oh, you know, they don't need to, I'm not afraid of them. You know, like, I guess, did he cooperate? There's rumors he cooperated. I don't care. But they need to fear me. Well, if you're putting threats out there, no matter how big you're getting, if you're in GQ magazine, this or that, that's not a direct threat, but it's certainly a veiled threat. And those of us who know the language know what he's saying. So I don't understand the guy really. I'd like to have him on my show just to have him tell his story and maybe, you know, put the word out about fentanyl, you know, about the dangers of fentanyl, because he's got a pretty big platform, and so do I.
Yeah.
But I just don't understand how these guys, some of them, I guess old habits die hard, because one day I asked even Anthony Riamonde, I said, you see those crazy people I was living with? Oh man, you put up with a lot. That religious couple was something else. You couldn't watch an R-rated movie. You couldn't do this. I couldn't have meat in the refrigerator. You know, the show Inmate to Roommate was like really crazy. And it's all non-scripted. I lived this with these people I was living with. I was like, what the hell? I just got out of prison. I want to eat a freaking steak, man. What is wrong with people? So I said to Anthony when I interviewed him, hey, what do you think of those people? He goes, oh man. And he was like biting his tongue. I said, what would you have done about it back in the day? They treated you like that. He goes, I don't know. I think the guy would have had an accident.
Oh man, that dude's so funny, man. Yeah. No, just the way his humor and shit is. No,
it's a great interview.
He's funny, man. I like always having him on. But you know when you were talking about the beefs and stuff, I'll tell you an interesting segment that I actually did on my show with Frank DiMatteo and Larry Mazza. So, Frank was never cooperated with the government. So some guys, they won't do shows with people that became informants. That's a hard thing to, line up. So I was able to line these guys up and talk about each of their cases. Larry Mazza, became a government informant, and Frank didn't. So they kind of gave their perspective in their case, what they went through, and there was no arguing. It was just listening. And, they understood each other. And hell, they got like 12,000 views. And that was a pretty good one, man. That was like last month I released that. So, there's not all the bad that and drama and shit that goes on, in this genre. I was able to connect them to like that, and
so somebody who's really trying to change, as long as you didn't put maybe a direct family member in prison or whatever, they should all these years later, come to terms with why I did what I did, why you did what you did, and move on. Whether they'll probably never be friends again, because that family, that organized crime family, to them is family. Right. So it's just as offensive as if you put a blood family member in prison. So I get that, but that was really good. I didn't catch that show, and I guarantee you, send me that link today, and I will watch that tonight when we get done with this.
Yeah,
that sounds like a good sit down that you arranged. A little healing for everybody.
Yeah, and they weren't like. They weren't on the same case or nothing like that. I mean, they were both in the Colombo family, but, Frank was with the Gallo crew, which was a crew inside the Colombos, and they were beefing or whatever with each other. But, they were around different, I think it was like maybe 5 or so years from different time frames where they were active in the Colombo family and stuff. But
in the years during those Colombo wars, I was very active doing burglaries and, high-end stuff. We would doing straw purchases of guns. We were sending guns to New York, other states. We were sending them to Dominican Republic, getting other things back in, kilos of cocaine. And a lot of the guns going to New York, I had a friend in South Florida say, if I was you, I'd stop sending so many guns to New York, because the people I was sending them to were peripherally involved in the Colombo wars. And I didn't want any of my guns, that I did, had people buy or we stole, ended up on the streets or in bodies and all that. But
yeah, that would have been horrible.
He said, just stay away from New York for a while, because they're really out to kill each other there right now. And there was bodies dropping everywhere. Ironically, I think it was both, correct me if I'm wrong, both Greg Scarpa and his father turned out they were high echelon FBI informants. I think father and son both. If I'm wrong, I apologize, guys. But is that
I know for sure. Greg Scarpa Sr. was government informant for 30 plus years. I don't know about his father though. I've never done any research on his father, but for sure I have Greg Scarpa.
Senior's the father. The Grim Reaper. Which one was the Grim Reaper? The younger one. Okay, so the younger one was in jail in MCC, trying to set up one of the original hijack guys, the bomber, the Trade Center bomber. Really? He was giving him kites about how the towers are going to fall before the World Trade Center come down. So he had a camera in there from the FBI, and he was taking pictures of him because the guy wanted him to flush him after he read the notes. And so he took pictures of the notes, whatever, for the FBI. So he was trying to disrupt 9/11. There's a really good book about it. I think it's called The Grim Reaper. A lady wrote it with him, with his blessings, and he tells the story that he tried to work. The problem was they couldn't find him credible on that, and then it would undermine all these other cases, these other cases. So Janet Rito and the higher ups in the Justice Department back then decided to ignore him and what he was doing and what this terrorist dude was saying in the other cell about the towers, and there's a plan afoot to bring him down with airplanes. They decided to deliberately ignore all that and let that happen, because to call him credible on one case would make him credible on something else he was trying to do, which was kind of backpedal on some conviction he helped him make. I don't know the whole story. I don't remember. I read the book a while ago, but he himself says that he was trying to do that.
I have to look into that because that does sound interesting, man. That'd be a good read.
Around here somewhere, right on the shelf nearby. I just can't remember.
If you find it later, tell me. I'll probably look it up or some shit and read it. But
Greg Scarpa, Grim Reaper, something like that.
But yeah, he's in the documentary. I talk about him, is what I mean. But he's long dead or whatever now. But I talk about him and how he was an informant and a hitman for the family for so long. And Larry Mazza worked directly under him. He was in this guy's crew, and that's the main reason why Larry became an informant. That's because your boss is telling you to be this wise guy, and you're killing people with him, but yet he's giving all this information to the government. So
I noticed even when I was in prison, some of the head gang leaders were the ones meeting with the investigators more than anybody, and they'd come back into the unit and say, "Oh, somebody better stop telling on me." They'd make a big announcement in the unit, but then you find out from the investigators or from the administration or whoever, the fly on the wall, because everybody in prison has a fly on the wall. I was a law clerk, okay, and I was an offender representative committee, so I was around administration all the time, and they'd always say, "Don't worry about him; he's working with us." I said, I'm not worried about any of these guys, and I'm not stupid. Where I come from, if you're meeting with you guys behind closed doors, they don't have a friend in there with them in their group, they are informing. But they would be quick to accuse everybody else of doing it, and they're the ones doing it for favors and this and that. And it's a big joke. They recruit these underlings to do all their dirty work, extort people, beat up on people, whatever they're going to do. And then when the shit hits the fan, those same leaders telling everybody so they can get 4 or 5 years, and the ones they recruited and had to do all the dirt get life sentences. And then a lot of times these informants, I want to do a show about how, like, the FBI, a lot of times back in the day, we're not talking about now, because there's very good agents out there. We all know there's decent guys in law enforcement, and there's piece of craps that beat people to death and all that. But back in the day, you had certain FBI agents that would let these high echelon informants get away with murders and everything. For example, what's the guy in Boston?
Whitey Bulger.
His handlers let him get away with all kinds of murders and stuff. He said, "I'll be your informant, but only against the Italians on the other side of town."
Yeah.
And so Bulger was informing for years, on the Italian mob.
I touch on that in my documentary, about how the feds let him do that for so long. I also talk about Joe Messina of the Bonanno crime family. He was the head boss, and he became a government informant. Ralph Natali, he was with the Philadelphia crime family. He was the boss. He became an informant. So it's not uncommon, that you see this kind of stuff happen. And I cover it in the documentary about these guys.
Here's the thing, I was a law clerk in prison, and I learned one thing, and also just from life, straight experience. The FBI and all these agencies, they're allowed to let their CIs commit crimes, nonviolent crimes, to pretend they're still in the life. They can steal cars, they can wheel and deal in stolen property, as long as it's not violence, no hurting people, no murders.
Right.
But there's so many cases, especially from the 70s and 80s, where they did let them kill and all kinds of crap because they were going after another crew. The agents were making their careers. In my opinion, all the people that they were allowed to kill, all those families have multi-million-dollar lawsuits against the FBI for letting it happen. We have a case out here in the Midwest. We ran across a guy. I'll put his name out there. Charles Ray Smith, Elkhart, Indiana. The Bernie Madoff of the Midwest robbed senior citizens, allegedly. Many of his victims turned up dead. Okay, he tried to sell us a house he didn't own. I said, dude, you don't understand who I am. I said, if this is a bullshit thing, you're not letting me in the house. There's a black guy moving in this house. It's one of the best areas of town. And he's calling the guy by the N-word and all this. And I said, you're going to regret it if you try to sell me a house you don't own, because I'm starting to catch on to your bullshit. Then he tried to sell my fiance a fake cure for leukemia. She had leukemia at the time. Mary's in remission now. But so this piece of crap, eventually, with all his other victims, he gets arrested last year. He had plotted to kill so many people. He killed his girlfriend for giving the phone to the FBI because he was beating the shit out of her while he was running his scams. So she got tired of that and started working against him with the FBI. But then she felt bad when they had told him, and he killed her. And told her he was going to do it. So this guy just pled guilty the other day. You look on my site, I put some shorts up about him. Charles Ray Smith. Mary gave an interview for ABC News about this, and this guy here. The reason I started that story, he was working as a federal informant for years. So if senior citizens or a doctor, whoever he's ripping off, went and said, "Hey, I want my money back. You're full of crap. You don't own that property. I'm too busy working to pay attention. I want my money back." Ammunition deals overseas. We're talking about $1 million deals. What he would do is hand somebody a laptop. Hey, here's an extra laptop. Give it to your kids. They take it to their house. It's loaded with child porn. And then he would call his handlers at whatever agency, because he was an informant, and tell them to go raid the house because, hey, that guy's got some child porn. But he's the one that gave him the computer. Okay? Or he set them up on fake murder for hire charges or fake this or fake that. So what's happening is, for all these years, so many people have turned up dead connected to this con artist. Last week, he's allowed to plead guilty only to wire fraud charges. So now the victims are outraged that, look, he needs to be charged with the murders he's been doing also. But this is somebody who, the other thing he would do to terrorize people, especially these older people don't, like I would know better, but these people around the Midwest are very nice out here where I'm from. You're not far from me. I'm from Brooklyn, but I'm in Indiana now, still filming my 2 TV shows. Well, he would take advantage of these really kind-hearted, hardworking people. And then he would say, because he had a shitload of motorcycles, he's got a mansion on the river, he would say, I'm a high-ranking member of the Hells Angels and all this nonsense.
I've seen that on your page, yeah.
Yeah, all while pretending to be a Hells Angel, but all while working with the FBI, allegedly, and other agencies, making fake cases against people he ripped off to get them out of his hair. If he couldn't kill them, he was trying to put them in prison. So all this is starting to unravel now, and there's a lot of outrage. We all got to know, because we went to court to see what would happen because we're covering the case. Prosecutor, the U.S. attorney is a very good guy. The agent's a very good guy. They're all kind of new, but they didn't realize how treacherous this guy was. He pled guilty last week evasively. He told the judge to stop mumbling. He went off on the judge in the courtroom. Yeah. So this guy's a piece of work. Again, an informant who was allowed for years to continue ripping people off and killing people because he was feeding them for all these fake cases over the years.
Yeah, and see, when they do that kind of shit, it's just like, how do they allow that to happen? You know what I mean? But there's their reason is because they want to catch the bigger fish. They want to get all these other people.
Well, there's justification to some regard for civil order and, following the rule of law. We have a country of laws. It can't be, however, not when they're killing people. Use them all you want to get to the bottom of things. I don't really give a crap because I don't take partners.
No.
I don't take partners when I was doing my shit, so I didn't have to worry about it. But you don't just turn a blind eye. Now, what they argue later on when this comes to light, and I've seen it in case after case. Well, now we know he was a bad informant then and was still killing people, but we didn't know it then, Or they'll say something like, we acted in good faith on the information provided by our informant. We didn't know how bad he really was. They have all these legal loopholes. They get out of it. And if they say they acted in good faith, generally nothing's going to happen to the agents, from 10 or 20 years ago that allowed all this to occur.
Yeah.
And then the new agents and prosecutors are left to try to clean it up the best they can.
And everyone else, they get to move on, and
yep.
And then the family members are just stuck. They don't get their family back. There's no coming back for murder.
Listen, one of the victims, she got $1 million taken from this guy. He poses as the boyfriend, right? So he had sex with her, took pictures of her, all this stuff. I won't say her name on here. But she, in the hallway, the agent and the prosecutor were talking to all the victims and to me and Mary. We were covering the case. We had a big collection of people out there. And he was being evasive. They took a recess, and she said to the agent, she said, do me a favor. What's the worst you're going to do to me if when he walks out of that courtroom, I beat the crap out of him in the hallway? This is in federal court a few days ago. The agent said, don't talk like that. You want to be taken seriously in sentencing, not as somebody who beat the hell out of your ex who robbed $1 million from you. You got to get some of your money back because he's only getting like $100,000 back. She said, looked him right in the eye in front of all of us and told the federal agent, I don't give a crap. I want to know what's the worst that's going to happen. I am going to beat him half to death in his hallway when he walks out because he's in a wheelchair. He had surgery on his toe. He's playing the whole surgery thing. Get sympathy. She said, he's full of crap. He's lying to the judge in there. We all know it. And enough is enough. We've been dealing with this for 2 years. And, nothing happened. We talked her down to try to chill out. But
that's good.
Yeah, these guys just get away with anything. And it's disgusting. They're playing both sides of the fence. People, bodies are still happening. And they have all these lives destroyed, so.
Yeah, I mean, in the whole Whitey Bulger case, like he used it to, the whole, like you said, he used it against the Italian mafia, but like any other crew that was not his, they were going down. The FBI, they would feed him information thinking that he wasn't going to go out and commit murders or whatever, thinking that he wasn't, but he still did. But, that's how he became so big and, well known. And then, when he became an informant or whatever, he went on the run. And he didn't get, he got, like you in your case, you escaped prison. Well, he escaped, from having to go to prison. He was on the run for like a long time, quite a few years, and they eventually busted him and he went to prison, and then he ended up getting murdered as an old man. You know what I mean? But shit just comes around, man. You can try and escape shit, but sometime it comes back, man.
So this is a cautionary tale about mob history. Going to be on Invest in Yourself with Adrian Martinez. Please hit like and subscribe to my channel. Check out his channel. Check out his clothing line. I take it from one of your guests, and I sum it up in slightly different language. But anybody who thinks you can get away with being a wise guy today is a fool. The wisest of all guys or girls is somebody who stays the hell away from that life and tries to talk to a friend who's in it to get the hell out of it. And if that doesn't work, you can only warn them once or twice. You can't continue to warn them because then you become a target yourself. So, guys, continue doing the right thing. Thank you for all the guests that have ever been on my show. Look me up if you want to be on the show to talk about your stories, your books, your stories of redemption, inspirational, turning your life around from a life of crime, especially those stories. And thank you again for being on the show. Adrian, do you have anything else you want to add before we say goodnight?
Oh, well, I just want to say thank you, William, for having me on. I appreciate it. And, continue our friendship, and I also want to say, if anybody wants to find me, I'll send the links to, William, and he'll put the, my YouTube and my clothing brand in the video description, and, just subscribe to my channel. If you want to watch the documentary, it'll probably be coming out here in 2-3 months. And, it's going to be good. It's going to be well worth it. Thank you.
Right. You're welcome, Adrian. Great to have you once again. You've become a good friend. I appreciate that. This is William Steele, official William Steele True Crime on YouTube podcast. Check out my stuff. Subscribe, please subscribe. And Adrian, Invest in Yourself. Subscribe. Thank you, Adrian. Have a good night.
You too, man. This life is very twisted. You never know when it's your time to go. One day you're putting in work with someone, and the next day they're taking you out.
In our days, it was very quiet. Nobody ever talked about this. Nobody glamorized it. It was all like hush hush.
Not a glamorous life. And again, it's not what you see in Goodfellas. It's not what you see in Casino. Some days you were dead broke. Some days you had $2,000 in your pocket. It wasn't every day. You don't know anything else. You don't know what it is to go wake up 6 o'clock and go to work. Work? What the fuck is that? I wasn't going to work.
Even bosses get murdered in this life.
There was younger guys underneath him, and he wasn't doing the right thing, I guess. He was coming out of the card game, and unfortunately, a lone gunman came up and shot him 5 times.
People who knew me would tell you I like to use the bat a lot. If I had to shoot you, I'd shoot you too. I've done that.
This life requires many mixed personalities. You have to wear many hats in this life to try and survive.
You become 4 or 5 different people all at once. And You got to go home and be a dad and a husband. You got to go to work and do your job. You got to be out in the street and be a gangster.
Bonanno family is called Bonanno family because of my grandfather, Joe Bonanno.
That life there is done.
Oh,
Today you have to be legitimate today.
Man, but you got to be an idiot to want to be a hooligan today. Jail time's now like 100 years for doing nothing.
Yeah, you'll be dead, in prison for life, or in the witness protection program.
I don't know anybody. Now, when Mafia turned their back on me, I know everybody.
There was the big flip of the Gambino underboss, Sammy the Bull Gravano.
Here he is, signing autographs in a restaurant on Mulberry Street. And was supposed to be a secret organization.
He was a very, very, very violent guy. No question about it.
Albert Anastasia, he was a Brooklyn guy. He was probably the biggest killer in the history of the mob.
Michael Francis, his father, Sonny, was a really tough guy. But he really raised his son right.
If you want to see a gangster, that's Sonny Francis. And John Sr. don't compliment anybody.
This is a documentary series about the American Mafia. It includes 11 different crime families. Each episode is about a different one. The crime families include the Gambino, Genovese, Bonanno, Colombo, Lucchese, the Gallo Crew, Chicago Outfit, the Philadelphia Mafia, the Patriarca, the Trafficante crime family, and the Jewish Mafia. Please subscribe to my channel to watch each episode as they come out.
This is William Steele. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate your support. Please remember, hit the like and subscribe button now.